everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the ACLU's Know Your Rights training. Hello, hello. We're so glad you're here. We'll get started in just a few minutes. In the meantime, feel free to share in the chat what brings you here today.
Buenas noches a todos, bienvenidos. Vamos a empezar en unos cuantos minutos y mientras tanto, si quieren poner en el chat, ¿por qué es que están aquí?
Thank you, Maribel. Yes, in the chat, what brings you here today? No kings? Yeah, that's a great one. Community, thank you for sharing that. Yes. Ooh, okay, now the comments are coming in.
It's going fast and furious. We are seeing people from everywhere. Thank you for being here.
Amazing. We're going to wait for some friends to join us. Great. Wow, so many comments. Thank you so much. I feel so welcome. Um, Thank you all for putting that in the chat.
I see some people being here because they want to be safe.
Yeah, we're here for a Know Your Rights training. We're here to know our rights. Amazing. All right.
I see someone saying, I will not be a bystander.
We need to protect democracy. Yep. Oh my gosh, it's hard to keep up with the chat. I'm like just seeing it roll on in.
You know what's exciting, Kayla, is I see people mentioning no kings in the respective locations, and we see big cities, we see urban places, we see rural places. It's everywhere.
Yep. Let's see. Wow. Oh, this just warms my heart seeing all these folks join us today. Thank you all for taking time out of your evening. Yep, we shall resist. Amazing. I can't wait either. I know I'm so excited for this upcoming No Kings.
I see the word justice being mentioned again and again.
Oh gosh, all the emojis floating up. That's so cool. All right, I think we can go ahead and maybe get us started. Next slide, please. So, thank you all for being with us tonight. My name is Kayla, and I'll be guiding us through this Know Your Rights training in preparation for the No Kings rallies happening on Saturday, March 28th. Whether this is your first time joining us or you've been with us before, we're glad you're here because we need every single one of us. Before we get started, I wanted to take a pause and introduce our interpreter, Isao, who is on the call, and have them provide instructions for that feature.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Hi, good evening, everybody. My name is Isao Suga. I'm with the Community Language Cooperative. I'm here to create a space for language justice, where people can connect when they engage in the language of their hearts. Today, we will be using simultaneous interpretation. So when I'm finished saying this part in Spanish, we will turn on interpretation, and you will see the interpretation globe or button to access at the bottom of the screen. And even if the event is predominantly in one language, please select the language of your preference to access English interpretation if questions or comments are made in a different language. When selecting your language, you can check the mute original audio if you don't want to hear both languages at the same time. Muy buenas noches a todos. Soy Isao, estoy representando a la cooperativa del lenguaje comunitario. Estoy aquí para crear un espacio de justicia del lenguaje donde la gente se pueda conectar cuando se relaciona con el lenguaje de su corazón. El día de hoy estaremos utilizando interpretación simultánea. Entonces, cuando terminemos este mensaje, vamos a hacer disponible el servicio de interpretación y usted verá las opciones en la parte baja de su pantalla para seleccionar el lenguaje de su preferencia. Cuando haga su selección, también puede seleccionar silenciar el audio original si es que no quiere escuchar ambos lenguajes al mismo tiempo. We're ready. We can go ahead and get started. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Isao. Um, I also want to share that we will have two more trainings, Know Your Rights trainings, in preparation for the No Kings rallies. The trainings will be next Monday, March 23rd, one in English at 6 p.m. Eastern and one in Spanish at 8 p.m. Eastern. Please share with your friends and loved ones. Just a few more notes before we dive in. No Kings calls are public calls, meaning anything you share in the chat has the potential to be shared widely. Please be mindful as you engage. Let's show the world and each other our enthusiasm and support, but be careful, maybe not to share any identifying information that might look like location or last name. If you are having any tech issues, please drop a message in the Q&A section and a team member will help you out. You can also use the Q&A function to ask any questions. We have ACLU staff working to answer as many of your questions as possible. Please note that given the large number of people joining us today, we will now close the chat to allow us to focus on the presentation. It was great engaging with you all. All right, we have closed captioning available. In order to utilize the captions, click on the CC button at the bottom of your screen, then select Show Subtitles. Tonight's webinar will be much more engaging if you can join using the Zoom app on your computer or your smartphone so that you can see the beautiful slides we've created. Everybody who registered for this training will also receive the recording. Finally, please note that this space is closed to the press. If you are a member of the press in attendance, you may send any press-related questions to media@aclu.org. All right, next slide. Thank you. So, we're all on the same page. Let's quickly review the agenda for tonight's webinar. Maribel is going to ground us in the moment with why we're here, and then we're going to pass it to John to know our rights. Then we're going to have a quick little fun section to test our knowledge, go over some best practices, how we can take action in our communities, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. With that, I'll pass it over to Maribel. Tell us why we're here.
Thank you, Kayla. Really appreciate you beginning and really appreciate all the people who are here. We saw people saying why they were here. I saw people talking about cost to education. I saw people talking about democracy. I saw people talking about justice. Now, we are seeing this administration really ignoring not only domestic law, but ignoring the Constitution itself. We are right now at a defining moment of overreach by this administration. This administration believes that the president is a king who can do whatever he desires. But this is what's really important. When the president escalates his attacks, our movement grows. And even more of us show up. And we're seeing that tonight. And when we show up, the world takes notice and change happens. Now, the next slide, please. Whether we are talking about the horrors that are happening in other parts of the world, such as the war in Iran, or we are happening about what's happening here at home, such as the vicious attacks on immigrant communities and basically anybody who protests or anybody who is not with this administration. We know that we're not going to remain quiet. We know that on March 28th, our collective refusal to these attacks will be heard. And we know that we will be telling this administration, not on our watch. Now, let me remind you what No King stands for. It's one simple American truth. Our leaders rule for the people and by the people, not on the basis of one man's whims. Now, many people ask me why mass mobilizations. I'll tell you why. Mass mobilizations like No Kings are a key way to defeat authoritarianism. We have seen that protests, both organic and planned, make a difference. Just this past year, we saw this administration draw back on federal deployments. We saw how our protests made members of Congress take stronger positions in support of justice. We also have seen how the current partial government shutdown is due because members of Congress are fighting to rein in ICE, their cruelty and their terror. And this is why we need to continue to speak up. And this is why we need to bring more people into this movement. And now I will hand it over to my colleague John to walk us through our rights. John, what rights do we have as we go out and protest?
Thank you so much, Maribel. Before I get started, I want to ask our interpreter, Isao, whether or not the interpreter channel has been turned on. I saw you put a comment in that it hadn't yet. Has
I
it,
don't ha
Isao?
Yes, I don't have the ability to turn it on, but it's not on yet.
Okay. Carly, is that something that you can take a look at as we continue to move forward? And hopefully that will work out while we get started here. Um, Hello, everybody. This evening, we're going to focus on some of the basic protest rights that we all hold in the United States, regardless of our citizenship or immigration status. These rights apply during our interactions with the government, including various law enforcement agencies. It can be difficult these days, sometimes, to tell whether an official is with the local police or ICE or some other agency when they're masking themselves in the street. It makes it even more difficult. But these basic rights that we're going to go over to protest apply equally to all federal, state, local law enforcement agencies, as well as to any interactions you may have with the National Guard. Fortunately, we're not seeing as much of that right now because of the strong pushback that we've made against the National Guard occupying our cities. So these rights apply with any law enforcement agency. Next slide, please. Our protest rights are connected to several fundamental constitutional rights, including the First Amendment right to free speech, the First Amendment right to petition the government for change, and the right of the people peaceably to assemble. That's a little bit of Old English there. It's the word from the Constitution. But the idea that protests need to be peaceful in order to be protected by the Constitution is important here, and we will have more to say a little bit later about No King's approach to and commitment to peaceful protest and adherence to nonviolence. Even though we have a right to protest in the United States, police can impose reasonable limitations on protest activities. Sometimes these are referred to as time, place, and manner restrictions or regulations, and we'll talk a little bit more about what those restrictions are and the role of permits in a moment. And also, law enforcement can, under the law, monitor protests. They can enforce laws. They can intervene for public safety, but under the law, they must not use excessive force to retaliate against peaceful demonstrators. Next slide, please. Our right to protest, to march, to demonstrate is protected by the First Amendment. But the Constitution does not completely protect all types of free speech in every circumstance. Police and other government officials, as I mentioned, are allowed to place certain restrictions, and your rights while protesting can vary a bit based on a few important considerations, including whether you're on private property or public property. If you're on private property, the property owners can set rules for speech on their property. Um, and if you're on public property, your rights can vary depending upon whether or not the event required a permit. Your rights are generally strongest on public streets, sidewalks, and parks. But regardless of where you're protesting and whether you have a permit to protest, generally speaking, you cannot block access to buildings or interfere with other purposes the property was designed for. So important to keep that in mind. Um, Next slide. Let's talk a little bit about special considerations for non-citizens, for immigrants. Um, Again, it's important to note that the Constitution, under the law, protects everyone in the United States, regardless of our immigration status and our free speech rights. But we know as a reality that the Trump administration has unlawfully arrested immigrant leaders, activists, and students in order to retaliate against them for speaking out. And they have placed them in a very precarious situation. People have been detained for months. Some people have been deported. So this is an area where non-citizens may still face risks for exercising their rights. And we urge anybody protesting, but especially non-citizens, to assess your risk tolerance to create a safety plan. And for non-citizens, if needed, consult with a trusted immigration lawyer when deciding whether and how to participate in protest actions. Next slide, please. Oh, actually, before we move to the next slide, can I ask you to move back? I missed one important point there. I also wanted to mention that if you are an adult non-citizen, whether you're at a protest or anywhere else, under law in the United States, adult non-citizens who have a green card or who have been granted a visa or some other lawful status should carry proof of that status with them at all times, and especially including at protests. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit more about the so-called time, place, and manner restrictions that the Constitution permits the government to impose reasonably on speech. Permits are a way of negotiating and settling questions about the proper time, place, and manner of a protest in advance, especially for very large events that require blocking traffic or street closure or where sound amplifying devices are used. And I want to share a little bit with you about how the No Kings event hosts or the event organizers approach this. The No Kings host organizations attempt to secure any needed permits in advance, and usually successfully, but in some cases, a locality might fail to make a decision on a permit application in time, or a locality might impose such onerous or unreasonable conditions and costs on our host organizations that it makes it impracticable to resolve them prior to a protest. It is clear in some cases that some localities are not actually trying to make it easy for No King event organizers to get a permit approved. And therefore, some No Kings events might move forward without an approved permit, either because no permit is needed for the particular event planned, or because a permit has not yet been approved prior to the event. You should know that in these cases, the organizers take extra care to try to devise event plans that are in line with customary legal boundaries and local rules, knowing also that there might be a need to negotiate any concerns over the manner of the protests on the spot with police and other local authorities. And whether or not an event is approved with a permit in advance, you as a protester might be asked or ordered by police to do something like move off the street, make way for traffic, or to stop doing something like you can't carry a sign that uses a pole in this city. And here's our advice and our request to you as somebody joining the No Kings protest. If a police officer orders you to do something or not to do something, in any given moment, do your best to listen to and comply with police instructions and orders. But if the orders seem unreasonable, try and find somebody from the event safety team, like a safety marshal, and alert them to the situation. Um, Usually, safety marshals will be wearing like a visible armband or a vest so that they are easily identifiable. And often, with instructions for each local event, there'll be a description of how to find somebody on the safety team. And the safety team, the safety marshals can pull in the right people from the host organizations who have been assigned to interact with law enforcement. And think of it as their job to do that negotiation with the police and not your job, please. Next slide, please. Let's take a little bit of break from rights and kind of focus on some safety practices here. One of the risks in attending a protest in interacting with law enforcement is risk of escalation. Police order something or views a protester as acting out of line, or sometimes there's counter protesters or people who are seeking to provoke reactions from police. Sometimes they're not there really to advance the purposes of the No Kings events. It happens. Um, and let's talk a little bit about safety and de-escalation. To protect yourself, we always recommend trying to remain calm and never physically resisting arrest, keeping your hands visible if law enforcement approaches you. Um, Remember that law enforcement may not lawfully detain or question or investigate your actions arbitrarily. They need reasonable suspicion that you've committed or are committing a crime. So if you are stopped, you may ask if you're free to leave, and if the answer is yes, you may walk away calmly. And again, like can't stress this enough. Never physically resist or obstruct or do anything that would give a law enforcement officer an excuse to say that you are doing so. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about documenting and recording the police. This has become really one of our most important tools in the fight for law enforcement accountability. When you're lawfully present in any public space, you have the right to photograph anything in plain view, including federal buildings and the police. On private property, the owner may set rules about photography or video. But in either situation, police officers may not confiscate or demand to view your photographs or your video without a warrant, nor may they delete data under any circumstances. And again, this is true this is true regardless of the immigration status. However, they may order you to cease activities that they say are interfering with what they consider to be legitimate law enforcement operations. And they may also, and typically do, ask you to back up to give them more space. Next slide, please. Even though you have a right to record law enforcement agents in public, that doesn't mean that it doesn't still carry risks. And the Trump administration is repeatedly disregarding fundamental First Amendment principles when it comes to recording ICE officers. And as we're seeing, many officers are retaliating against people who record them. Some agents may react harshly to those who record their activities, including by threatening and making arrests. It's important again to assess your risk tolerance. And I'm going to offer some practices that tend to reduce risks. You want to maintain your distance. You want to film openly, keep your hands visible. You want to try your best to follow instructions. And some people record while they're in a car. You don't want to do that while holding a handheld phone while driving. It's not safe. And in some places, it's against the law, and you could get pulled over for a citation for doing that because it's unsafe. Next slide, please. Let's talk a little bit about what happens if you're arrested. I should say that there have been very few arrests in prior No Kings events, despite the fact that these events have been huge with millions of people. And we're not expecting wide-scale arrests at the upcoming No Kings events. But this information I'm sharing, but it's possible. You should always know that it's possible arrests will be made at a protest. And the information I want to share with you is still helpful for other situations you may find yourself in. You have a right under the Fifth Amendment to remain silent until speaking with a lawyer. If you're charged with a crime and you can't afford a lawyer, then you have a right to be appointed a lawyer. That usually happens on your first court date. And you have the right to make a local call. Next slide. If you're arrested by immigration officials and you're in immigration detention, you have a right to notify your consulate, and that can be a very important step to take so that you're not in a black box where nobody that knows where you are. And if you are charged with a civil immigration offense, if you are charged with a civil immigration offense rather than a crime, you have a right to seek a lawyer and to speak with one if you can secure one. But if it's just a civil offense, you don't have that constitutional right to be appointed an attorney, whether or not you can afford one. You can ask for a list of free and low cost lawyers. Next slide, please. And then finally, just some tips if your rights are violated. You want to write down everything that you can remember, including the officer's patrol car number, their badge. If you can obtain it, the agency they work for. You want to try to get contact information for witnesses. If you're able to do so, take photographs. And of course, we welcome and encourage you to let the ACLU know by contacting the ACLU affiliate in your state. Next slide, please. I want to invite Kayla and Maribel on with me and turn it over to Maribel for a moment.
All right, thank you, John. So now we have heard what our rights are. Let's put them in practice. Let's see how much you have retained. Now you should know we're going to open up the chat again because we're going to have a role play. In this case, John is going to be a protester, and then Kayla is going to be an officer. We're going to really see in practice what this looks like and how do we, make sure that we are either asserting our rights or not. So make sure that if you have comments as to what worked and what could have been done better, please put it in the chat. And John and Kayla, are we ready? I see it.
Ready.
All right. Well,
I'm almost ready. I need my protest on.
Oh, okay. So we're not ready.
Ready.
Again,
No hate.
Go for it.
No hate. No fear. Immigrants are welcome here. No kings either.
Sir, I need you to move off the street and onto the plaza.
I'm exercising my free speech. No hate.
And we have no problem with that. Speak all you want in the plaza, which is where the event is approved to occur.
I want to speak here. No hate.
You
no
and others
fear.
are blocking traffic in the street. You can see the backup.
I'm gonna film you because I think you're violating our free speech rights.
Move it now off the street.
I'm moving back.
I'm warning you that you will be arrested for blocking the highway if you don't move off the street
I
now.
have a First Amendment right to record the police.
Completely off the street. All of you, clear some room on the sidewalk so that people can pass by without walking on the street.
Off the sidewalks? She is violating our rights.
Don't move any closer to me. What's your name? Can I see some ID?
Why do you need to know that? Am I being arrested?
Not if you stay off the street and clear the way on the sidewalk.
Am I free to go?
Yes.
I'm going to go and get a safety marshal and tell them what's going on here.
All right. Thank you, Kayla. Thank you, John. End of scene. Now I am seeing people giving us what they thought worked, what didn't. John, I'm going to turn it over to you to debrief this exercise.
Wow. Was there something that worked? That'll be good to see from the comments. Yeah.
Oh,
So-
I hear magic words.
Yeah.
Magic words such as, am I free to go?
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, clearly, this is scripted role play. The protester, I was very eager to exercise every right that I could think of. But I think the question is, was doing so in that manner really necessary in this case? Or did it risk unnecessary escalation of the situation? I just want to stress here, most individual protesters are not going to know the specifics of the permit that was approved at an event, including whether it allows or not for the blocking of car traffic on the street or pedestrian traffic on sidewalks. And let me just say one more time, as we mentioned, if an officer instructs you to do something during a No Kings event, our request is that you comply in the moment, even if the request seems unreasonable to you. And that you, at that point, go and alert a safety marshal so that they can help with any police negotiation or pull in the right person to do so. That person who they'll pull in will know the specifics of the permit, the local rules. They may also have in their possession the contact information for the commanding officer on site who can be helpful in the negotiation. So in this case, I eventually took that step of saying I would go get a safety marshal, but our request is that you kind of do that from the outset. On the other hand, yes, the magic words. I think that this protester did finally ask some clarifying questions that were helpful when the officer asked for their name and ID. Again, if you don't know whether you're being detained or arrested or whether you're free to go, you can ask, and if the answer is yes, it's often the safest thing to bring the interaction to an end, especially if it is starting to escalate, which I think this one was. Kayla, having played the part of the officer, anything else that you would add?
Yeah, not every officer would have given that many warnings, I think, in this situation. And I'd also add that maybe not every officer would have taken the time to explain the reasoning for their commands.
Yes, Kayla was scripted uh, as a relatively reasonable officer who had some patience with this protester exercising their rights. Okay. Speaking of magic words, I want to invite Kayla and Maribel to stay on with me for one moment as we move to the next slide. Tonight's training is focused very much on protest rights, so it's not a fuller know your rights training that goes over in detail, for example, the Fourth Amendment right, which gives you the right not to consent to unreasonable searches of yourself or your home or your body. And we don't go over much the Fifth Amendment right to remain silent or the Sixth Amendment right to a lawyer and detail on what that involves. But here are five key phrases that kind of you can fall back upon without remembering all those details of where all those rights come from. And I just would like us to practice them together. And please, if at home, feel free to repeat after me, and I'll invite Kayla and Maribel to do so now. Am I free to go?
Am I free to
Free to
go?
go.
I wish to remain silent.
I
I
wish to
wish to
remain
remain
silent.
silent.
I do not consent to this search.
I
I
do
do
not
not
consent
consent
to this
to this
search.
search.
Am I under arrest?
Am I
Am I
under
under
arrest?
arrest?
I want to speak to a lawyer.
I
I
want
want to
to
speak
speak to a
to a
lawyer.
lawyer.
All right. I will turn it back over to you, Maribel.
All right. Thank you, John. Next slide, please. Now, what we just did with John is he helped us understand what the constitutional protections that we have when we go out and protest. And there's plenty, as John just mentioned. And at the same time, he mentioned even with those protections, we know that there are realities. So we need to know and weigh in our risks. We also need to know the best practices as we go out and protest. Next slide, please. As we think about best practices, number one, safety. John mentioned it earlier. To us, it is important that we remain safe. And so, to do so, the first thing to do as you decide to go into a protest, make a safety plan. Think about, who is the person who will go with you that has a similar risk tolerance. If you don't have somebody to go with you, you can find people at a demonstration. That's one of the amazing things about going to a demonstration is that you get to speak your mind, and at the same time you get to create community. There are many people out there who are with you. And so sometimes when we're isolated in our houses, in our rooms, we might not see it. So one of the importances of going to a protest is to find similarly minded people who are in this with you. So find somebody with a similar risk tolerance. Decide on your emergency contact. Your emergency contact should be somebody who stays behind, who decides not to go to the demonstration, but who can be there for you if something goes wrong. So identify who that person is, have their phone number written on your arm so that if you need to contact them, you know how to contact them, and also so that they know that they are on call if you need help, so that they know where your important documents are, so that they know what numbers to dial if you need some help. So identify your emergency contact. When you get to the demonstration, I often do this. I often go to demonstrations with my mom. She is an elder. And so I often think about if we need to leave the demonstration, how are we going to exit? If we get separated, where are we going to meet? Those are important things to think about. I see some questions, for example, what if I go with children? I have gone to all the No Kings demonstrations that have happened. And one of the beautiful things about these demonstrations is that we see people who are from different generations. We see young people, babies, we see elders, we see everything in between. And so we need to make sure that we're protecting each other. Another thing, John mentioned this, at our demonstrations, the people who are organizing the demonstrations have been trained. We have safety leads who have been trained on how to deal with safety situations. So identify them. Often they're wearing vests or they're wearing something visible that makes sure that you know that they're the safety leads. And as I mentioned, use permanent marker to write down important numbers. Next slide, please. Now, John mentioned this earlier, and this is important. For No Kings, we are committed to nonviolence, and therefore our protests are peaceful. They are peaceful. Why? Well, there's many reasons why. One, John mentioned it earlier, peaceful protests are afforded the most constitutional protections. Now, if we engage in violence, then our protections get lesser and lesser. So it's important for us to be peaceful to have all of our constitutional protections. Now, they also build power and credibility. Why power? There are people out there who are as outraged as we are about what's happening right now, and they want to join. But some of them might decide not to join if they see violence. Some of them also might doubt the credibility of our movement if they see violence. So, peaceful demonstrations build power and credibility. And as I mentioned, they bring more people into the movement because many people right now are thinking, what do I do? How do I do it? The more they see that peaceful demonstrations work, the more they want to join. And they help to shape the narrative because, as we have seen this administration try to do, they have tried to label protesters this and that. But when people see with their own eyes that demonstrators are going out there in frog costumes, in unicorn costumes, that we have children demonstrating, that we have elders demonstrating, the narrative changes. And so all these accusations by this administration that protesters are doing this and that, they dissipate. It's clear that people understand that they're being lied to. So it is important for us to keep being peaceful because of all these reasons. Next slide, please. Now, because we're committed to peaceful demonstrations, we're also committed to de-escalation. One thing that is important to note, counter protesters also have free speech rights. And we want to make sure that, again, everybody's able to share their thoughts. So keep that in mind. And let's just think about how can we de-escalate, because while we are also aware that we want to make sure that everybody shares their mind, we also know that sometimes people come into protest because they want to cause chaos, they want to cause confusion. The less we let them do so, again, let's go back to the idea of shaping the narrative, the more we're able to really share our message. So how do we de-escalate? One way is ignoring people. Really, sometimes they just want attention, and when they don't get the attention, they just go away. So ignore them, step away, start chanting. Those are ways where you can just focus on our message and ignore what's out there. But sometimes, being realistic, you have to engage. In those cases, you can stay calm and use a neutral tone. We have seen again and again, if we escalate, the other person escalates more and more, and then it gets out of control. But if we remain neutral, if we remain calm, often the situation diffuses. Having said that, again, it could be that those techniques don't work. When they don't, make sure to notify an event organizer because, again, the organizers are trained in safety, they are trained in de escalation, they have thought about all of the different permutations of what can happen. So don't put the safety on yourself. Just alert an organizer, they will know what to do. Next slide, please. Now, I get asked, what should I bring to a demonstration? Some of us have been to many demonstrations. Some of us, this might be our first one. And that's okay. Welcome if this is your first one. So one of the questions that I saw in the Q&A was, should I bring a cell phone? I have been told not to bring a cell phone because I can be tracked. Also, people ask about smart devices. And the answer is, you're correct. Through a phone, you can be tracked. Through a phone, they can figure out what you're doing, right? So this is where you have to weigh what is important to you, what you will do. So, is it important to you to be tracked? On the other hand, we know that one of the most powerful devices that we have are our cell phones. Why? Because we can record, as was shown during the role play. So it's up to you. You get to decide. I know also in the Q&A I saw questions about, well, what if I bring a burner phone? There's different ways of bringing a phone that lessen the risk. And so for those of you, as you're thinking, a burner phone is just a different phone. You leave your phone at home, the one that has all your pictures, the one that has your email, the one that has basically your whole life, and you can bring in another phone that is just for the demonstration. So again, this is something that you have to assess. You can decide, well, I just need the phone to be able to make phone calls, or you might say, I also need that burner phone to be able to take video and make and take pictures. So think about it. If you do decide to bring a phone, fully charge it. So remember that. Now, it's important to be able to write down notes. So, was mentioned earlier, if something goes wrong, if you see a violation, you want to write down as much information as possible. So bring pen, bring paper, or bring a smart device where you can write that. Now, also, it was mentioned by John, um, you could bring a photo ID. It is important that it'll be issued by the United States. And if you are here on a visa or a green card, bring those documents because that is something that is required by the law. And of course, essentials such as water, snacks, medication, a poster. So those are ideas of what to bring. Next slide, please. Now let's talk about what not to bring. Do not bring weapons, even if they are legal, because again, at No Kings, we are committed to non-violent, peaceful demonstrations. So therefore, we expect people who come to not bring any weapons, do not bring anything illegal, and don't bring anything that you cannot afford to lose or that you don't want the police to confiscate. So those are things to keep in mind. Next slide, please. Now, this is really important. Again, it was mentioned earlier, and people have been asking, I know that nowadays I need to think about my privacy. How do I protect my privacy? And I have to tell you that this is something that I have become more aware of in the past year than ever before. So one of the things that you can do, and again, you have to decide what works for you. But I know that before this administration, I used to use my phone where my face or my thumbprint would open my phone. I don't do that anymore. Why? Because I know now that the police cannot require me to give them my password unless they have a warrant, a judicial warrant. But what they can do is they can take away my phone and put my phone next to my face and then open my phone. So turn off biometric unlock functions. That's something that you can do. The other thing that I've learned, I used to think communicating via text was just the normal thing that you did. I know that in some places WhatsApp is the place to communicate. I have now learned that different messaging applications have different protections. So some of the applications that have the best protections are something like Signal, where it's encrypted end to end. So something for you to think about. I have now moved to communicating over encrypted messaging applications. And the other thing you can do, say, for example, to the person who was asking, I don't want to be tracked, but I do want to bring my phone so that I can take pictures and I can take video. You can put your phone on airplane mode. However, you should know that at that moment, because in the airplane mode, they will not be able to track you. But later on, they might still be able to figure out where you were, etc. So something to think about. Next slide, please. I am now going to turn it over to my colleague Kayla because we are here talking to you about our rights, best practices, and more importantly, how to take action. Kayla, can you tell us how we can take action?
Yes, thank you so much, Maribel. In moments like these where we are made to feel powerless, No Kings becomes more important than ever. This is a chance for us to come together to turn our frustration into unity and to show the world what collective power looks like. Next slide. Amazing. So to find a No Kings event near you, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the chat. Together, we can put today's knowledge into action, protecting ourselves and defending our communities while exercising our First Amendment rights. Amazing. Yeah, click the link in the chat, find an event near you. All right. I think now if we can go to the next slide, folks have amazing. Okay. Yeah, we have some time for questions. We've got a few minutes to answer a few questions that folks have put in the Q&A. If you haven't already put your question, please do so now. If you're joining us by Zoom app on your computer or phone, you can submit your questions by using the chat box found in the toolbar at the bottom of the Zoom window. If you joined us by phone, we won't be able to take your questions during this event, but we do encourage you to email us at info@peoplepower.org and we'll get back to you. Again, that's info@peoplepower.org. You can see it placed in the chat. Thank you, Alex, and we will get back to you. All right. Let's look through some questions. Okay, our first question, I think it's for John. John, our first question is: should citizens carry proof of citizenship?
This is a
Um,
great, yeah, go ahead, Kayla, sorry.
Sorry. They're also adding that they're a citizen at the protest. Can they be present with no identification? Uh, you know, do we have any guidance on that? Proof of citizenship, do we should carry?
Yeah, and I see another question. If I'm a citizen, should I remain silent if arrested? Um, so let me make clear one thing about what the law says. In the United States, U.S. citizens are not required to carry proof of citizenship. So there's nothing in the law that requires that, and we have a right not to carry proof of citizenship in the United States. At the same time, um, many citizens are carrying proof of citizenship for their own safety, and I would say especially people who believe that they will be racially profiled on the basis of their race or their accent and believed to be an immigrant by others. We have seen the reports of citizens being wrongfully arrested by ICE, being wrongfully detained by ICE, in a few cases, being wrongfully deported by ICE. And so it really is a personal choice there. The law doesn't require it, but as a matter of safety, many citizens are carrying proof of citizenship. Um, and similarly, everybody, citizens and immigrants, have a right to remain silent if questioned by the police or by ICE or if arrested. But here is another situation where whether you want to exercise that right in a particular situation may depend a lot on the context. And in many contexts now, where, as we've seen, especially if you're interacting with ICE and you know it's an immigration enforcement official, people are deciding that it is in their strong interests to very quickly make clear that they are either an immigrant with lawful status and to present proof of that status, or to make very clear that they are a citizen as early on in the encounter with ICE as possible in order to avoid further interrogation, questioning, and the possibility of an unlawful arrest, even though you have the right to remain silent. And in some situations, depending upon the particular circumstances, that may be the right course of action.
Gotcha. Thank you. All right, our next question for Maribel. So this person writes that they love where they've been going to protests, but it's not in their area. Is it better to go to one closer to home to gain connections?
So that's a great question because I mentioned earlier, protesting itself has is very effective. Whether you protest in a city, in an urban area, in a rural area, anywhere. Now, the question is important though, because I also mentioned earlier that going to a protest allows you to build community, allows you to not feel alone, and allows you, in this case, the question was to make connections. So I would say my answer to you is protest anywhere and everywhere. One. I do think that there is value of creating community and being with others. I know, for example, I love seeing my neighbors. I know I love seeing who is around me, so that's really important. But basically, it is up to you. The most important thing is that you're engaging, and given that you are so excited to join, engage others. That's even better.
Thank you. All right, John, back to you. Our next question is: if a police officer declares that the demonstration is an illegal assembly or orders us to disperse, what should we do?
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the legal standard here about dispersal orders. But again, I want to make clear that for no kings events where we have safety leads, we often have permits, often have a police commander in charge to talk to. We really want you to bring in safety leads so we can have people with the most knowledge and those contacts do the negotiating. But legally, I just want to be clear because this may come up in other protests that you engage in. Shutting down a protest through a dispersal order is really supposed to be the very last resort for law enforcement. It is a dramatic impingement upon free speech, and therefore police are not supposed to break up a gathering unless there is a clear and present danger of a riot, of disorder, severe traffic interference, or some other immediate threat to public safety. And under the law, if officers issue a dispersal order, they are supposed to provide a reasonable opportunity to comply, including enough time, a clear, unobstructed exit path. And the idea is that people get a clear and detailed notice of the order. Um, so keep that in mind for other events. Again, in these particular events, alert safety leads so that we can help address that. We haven't seen many of those dispersal orders arise in the context of No Kings events.
Great, thank you. Maribel, the next question is for you. Should naturalized citizens or citizens carry proof of citizenship? Is a driver's license adequate?
I can tell you that I myself am a naturalized citizen. And while once upon a time I felt very safe as a naturalized citizen because the idea of citizenship is that now you belong, you have the same rights as everybody else. It is the reality that we have heard the rhetoric from this administration basically going against everybody, especially people who look like me, people who talk like me. So it is something that, again, each one of us needs to decide what we want to do. Some of us, as was mentioned by John earlier, some of us who are naturalized, who are citizens, have decided to carry our, whether it is a passport or now there's like the little passport card that is more accessible. Or sometimes what we do is also we let our emergency contact know this is where you can find my passport at home if I need it. This is where you can find my citizenship naturalization certificate if needed. So that's something to think about. Now, one of the questions that often comes up in terms of like, what is the document that will satisfy to say that you're a citizen? And the reality is, of course, a birth certificate showing that you were born in the US, that should do it. A passport should do it. But we have seen the reality is that sometimes even with that, it takes work. So just be ready, be prepared, and have your emergency contact at the ready in case you need it.
Thank you. John, someone wrote, we have had ICE threaten us with arrest for blowing a whistle. Do they have the right to do this?
Yeah, and I see, Kayla, that there's some other related questions. Someone asked, what are the limits for sound amplification? And somebody else asked about being warned about car honking. So there's a number of questions about noise. But of course, the question about whistles is on a lot of people's minds because in so many communities around the country, people are now using whistles as a quick response system to alert the neighborhood to the danger of ICE enforcement and to as a call to action to get people to come out and to witness law enforcement so that people's rights are not abused without any witnesses or observation. So what I can say about whistles is that there haven't been like specific legal court cases about whistles per se, but as a general matter, the First Amendment protects your right to alert people around you to the dangers of law enforcement. It protects your right to call people to come out and observe police. It even protects your right to use your voice or other instruments, whether that be a whistle or shouting, to protest law enforcement if that's what people are doing through a whistle. So I don't think there's anything special about whistles in that regard, and we're seeing a heavy overreaction by ICE and other police who I think are frankly are annoyed by whistles, and maybe who see that there's some effectiveness in the tactics that communities are taking. That said, you're not protected if you're doing otherwise unlawful activity because you're blowing a whistle. If you're standing between an officer and a subject that they're attempting to question or arrest, then you're blowing a whistle. The fact that you're blowing a whistle doesn't offer you special protection. And, ordinary noise ordinances might still apply. So it is also the case if you've got 10 people on a street corner blowing the whistle incessantly for a sustained period of time, that might actually violate the local noise ordinance of a particular locality. So localities do set limitations on sound amplification, duration, time of day. Uh, and you need to be aware of that, whether it's whistles or using a megaphone or car honking. But just to be clear, there's no like rule against any of those things in principle. And all of those things, if they're being used as speech to protest or for otherwise lawful means, are part of what is ordinarily understood to be free speech.
Great, thank you, John. I think we have time for two more questions. Our next one is for Maribel. Do you have specialized training and or materials for those who serve as safety monitors?
Definitely, Kayla. And I also saw a question about John mentioned we're not going over all these other amendments. I want to know more about them. What do I do? Two things. The answer is yes and yes. So, number one, for safety marshals, go to nokings.org/trainings. Nokings.org/trainings. We will include it in our follow-up email. And there you will see all of the trainings that we have coming up, including for safety marshals. So that's number one. Number two, for all these other amendments that John talked about, the ACLU has a Know Your Rights page. So just Google ACLU Know Your Rights, and you will see a plethora of information, and we'll also include it in our follow-up email where you can find more information about the different rights that John mentioned. And finally, I did also see how do I sign up my rally as a No Kings protest? You can also go to nokings.org, and there under host, you will see that there's a register an event. So really the answer is nokings.org. You will find all the information there. Back to you, Kayla.
Great. And our last question for the evening, John, do we have to stop filming if law enforcement tells you to stop filming, even if we're in a permitted space?
You have a right to film the police in any open and visible public space. It's very clear under the law that you have that right, that legal right. You need to use your own judgment. You could be dealing with a aggressive officer who doesn't care what the law is, and if your safety, if you feel like as though your safety is at risk, you have to make a judgment about your own risk tolerance. But if the question is about what are your rights under the law, you have the right to film law enforcement. Again, at a distance that doesn't interfere with their operation, and in a positioning that doesn't stand between them and somebody else in a way that's interfering. But if the question is just you can't film the police, and that's what some cop is telling you, you know that they what they're saying is not a lawful order, and you have to make a decision as to whether you want to comply with an unlawful order or continue to film, knowing that there are risks and that the police don't always follow the law.
Great, thank you. Well, everyone, thank you all for your thoughtful questions. We look forward to seeing you at a No Kings rally and to continue to raise our voices to defend our communities, to defend our neighbors, and to defend our democracy. We will be sharing a survey with you in the chat and sending you a recording of this training via email. Have a great night, y'all. Thanks again.